Welcome to the Standing Committee on Official Languages. This is our 66th meeting. Today is Thursday, January 31st, 2013. We are here pursuant to Standing Order 108 for a study of linguistic duality during the 150th anniversary celebrations of Canadian Confederation in 2017. Appearing before us for 1 hour, we have Mr. Lacroix, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation. Welcome, and please begin. Mr. Gaudin, I just want to put it on the record that when the Minister of Official Languages appeared last December, he said that each department had to ensure that the Official Language Act was being implemented and that they had to ensure that all colleague cabinets had to do this as well, that the committee invite all of the ministers responsible for each of the institutions covered by the roadmap with respect to Canada's linguistic duality 2008-2018 and ensure that each minister that the ministers responsible for the Canadian Forces and National Defence, Veterans Affairs, and Fisheries and Oceans appear for a televised committee for a 2-hour meeting by April 2nd, 2013. So the motion has been tabled with the clerk, and we could deal with this motion next week. Thank you, Mr. Godin. Thank you for your notice of motion. We will be able to discuss this motion next week. Mr. Lacroix, the floor is yours. Mr. Chair, members of the committee, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon and to participate in your study on the 150th anniversary of Confederation and Linguistic Duality. I know that the committee postponed this meeting last fall when we were in the midst of our CRTC license renewal hearing, and therefore we have this meeting today, and I appreciate for your understanding. CBC Radio-Canada is already planning a number of activities we hope will help Canadians celebrate 2017 in English and French. Today, I'd like to start by sharing with you a little bit about some of the ideas we're looking at in terms of programming. Then I'd like to talk about what we believe is our role as a public broadcaster and how we hope to use the 150th anniversary to facilitate discussions among Canadians about their country, about this important anniversary, and about what it means.
Canadians to their country, their community, and to each other in English, French, and 8 Aboriginal languages. We do this every day on our airwaves and increasingly on our digital platforms. Sometimes we actually combine the talents of our English and French services to present what we call signature events, events which we believe have important national appeal. For example, it was a year ago that CBC Radio-Canada presented 8th Fire, 8e Feu. You might actually remember this because we sent each of you a DVD, a sample DVD of that series. It explored Canada's 500-year-old relationship with its Aboriginal communities, with content on television, radio, and on an interactive bilingual website featuring 20 Aboriginal filmmakers from across the country. We're also proud that our efforts to support linguistic duality have been recognized by the Commissioner of Official Languages. The past year, he granted the Award of Excellence for the Promotion of Linguistic Duality to Bernard Saint-Laurent, CBC Radio-Canada journalist and host of the popular C'est la vie, which showcases Francophone culture from across the country for English listeners on CBC Radio. For CBC Radio-Canada, the 150th anniversary will be the culmination of several years of important Canadian anniversaries. We intend to play a significant role in sharing these events with Canadians and in building the momentum towards 2017. Our road to Confederation includes the anniversaries of the Charlottetown and Quebec conferences, as well as the 200th anniversary of the birth of John A. Macdonald. 2014 marks 100 years of Nellie McClellan and the women's rights movement in Canada. In 2016, if they stay on the ice, we'll celebrate the centenary of the National Hockey League. Between now and 2017, there are many important anniversaries, like the 100th anniversary of the battles of Vimy Ridge and Passchendaele, the 75th anniversary of the World War II battle for Dieppe, and the 70th anniversary of D-Day and Ortona. En 2017, on célébrera aussi le 375e.
In 2017, we'll also celebrate the 370th anniversary of the founding of Montreal and the 50th anniversary of Expo 67. And as Mr. Godin pointed out before this committee, this will also be the 160th anniversary of the deportation of Acadians. I believe I said the deportation of Acadians. I would also like to point out that our ongoing preparations to bring Canadians to the Olympics in Sochi in 2014 and Rio de Janeiro in 2016 and the Pan Am and Parapan Games in Toronto in 2015. We're delighted to be bringing Canadians the Olympics in English and French, and while they aren't technically part of the 150th celebrations, our experience has been that these international sporting events are a fantastic way to bring Canadians together. Over the coming months, we will be making decisions about how our program schedules will mark these important anniversaries leading up to 2017. A few of you may remember that in 1967, CBC Radio-Canada used its presence across the country to engage Canadians in celebrating the centennial of Confederation. We want to do the same thing for the 150th. Last August, we announced Canada 150 2017 starts now. This is a plan for a series of conferences across the country to help generate excitement about the 150th. We want to ensure that there's a public space where communities can gather to share their stories about Canada and begin planning activities to celebrate this important milestone. It will also help CBC Radio-Canada gather ideas and content that we will then share on all our platforms.
We're an interactive website where Canadians can join in the conversations regardless of where they live. It will be launched soon, and we'll be asking Canadians to contribute their own content on this site in the months ahead. Canada 150 2017 starts now is a partnership between CBC Radio-Canada, Via Rail, and Community Foundations of Canada. Earlier this week, we announced dates and locations for our conferences in every region of the country. The final national conference will be held in Ottawa on June 27th, just before Canada Day, which is for us, of course, an important broadcasting day. These conferences and related activities are also being produced in collaboration with Canadian organizations already at work on planning 2017 celebrations, including YMCA Canada, National Association of Friendship Centres, Imagination 150, and Charlottetown 2014. Des partenariats stratégiques avec des entreprises.
Strategic partnerships with corporations, communities, and government organizations will help us leverage our resources in support of 2017. I am, however, aware that members of this committee have expressed concerns about CBC Radio-Canada's ability to manage its budget cuts and still provide programming appropriate to highlight the upcoming anniversaries. There is no question. It's a challenge. There is no limit to the programming ideas we would like to pursue, but like all organizations, we need to manage what we have in a time of shrinking resources. Let me give you an idea of the challenge. Last year, the CRTC's Local Programming Improvement Fund, the famous LPI Fund, allowed us to be present at the Canadian Francophone Games in Sudbury, National Acadian Day in Tracadie-Sheila, the 2012 Année des Francescois in Saskatchewan, and the 150th anniversary of the village of Saint-Albert in Alberta. The phasing out of the LPIF makes funding the resources for these kinds of events a challenge. It is likely that we will no longer be able to cover these kinds of events in the manner that we have in the past. What we will be able to do, however, will ultimately depend on the partnerships we can establish. But CBC Radio-Canada intends to continue to play a leadership role in bringing Canadians together to share in these important national events. We're very excited about the lead up to the 150th, and we look forward to offering exciting Canadian programming to our audiences. I'd be pleased, Mr. Chairman, to take your questions. Thank you, Mr. Lacroix. We have 50 minutes for questions and comments. Mr. Godet. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I'd like to welcome Mr. Lacroix. Most times we've met, we've had our differences on the way CBC views the country. But first of all, you might be surprised, but I'd like to thank Radio-Canada CBC for finally sending a journalist out to cover news in Atlantic Canada. I don't thank you very often, but now we have a journalist. And this journalist is going to be able to go there and cover the news. Now we'll see whether we'll be hearing about Atlantic Canada on the national news, along with Céline Galipeau. We'll be checking in on this. I'm convinced that you will, Mr. Godet. And the other thing is, yes, we will be hearing from you later on about CRTC and all that, but right now we're dealing with the 150th anniversary of Canada. I see that you did allude to the fact that this is also an anniversary for the deportation of Acadians, and I thank you for doing it. It's important that people know this occurred. But what I'm concerned about now, and from what you're saying, Mr. Lacroix, is that CBC Radio-Canada is to cover all of Canada, for all Canadians. I'm worried that Radio-Canada resembles more like Radio Montreal. You say yourself, and that it's going to be very difficult because of what happened at the CRTC. It will be very difficult to cover other local programming. There were Luc et Luc, there was Lucky Luke, there was a Revue Acadien. Programs like this that might be difficult to cover. But now, what we're worried about now is that we're going to go back to the days of Radio Montréal. People in the Gaspé have also told me that they suffer from the same problem. Whether you're in Sherbrooke or Chicoutimi, it's always Radio Montréal. This is our public radio. We feel that Radio-Canada is very precious to us. I'm not talking about Yvon Godin here. I'm talking about everybody. And I want to ensure that we're going to have celebrations going off throughout the four corners of the country, and I want to make sure, and this also, of course, applies to the Anglophone side as well. Mr. Godin, it's always a pleasure to hear from you. I know that you are a fervent supporter somewhere in your heart of CBC Radio-Canada, and we've had opportunities to discuss these issues as I've had opportunities with several members of the committee. Well, our strategic plan for 2017, the second pillar, as a public broadcaster, we are to reflect the regions and show through the conferences that we just announced. When you take a look at the list of cities where these conferences are going to be held, it includes Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Saskatoon, Winnipeg, Montreal. So covers the country right across from coast to coast. So it's involving all kinds of people. The objective of these conferences is to create public spaces where people can talk to each other. So we can ask them, what are you going to do for the 150th celebration? We want to be connected with our partners. We're going to ask our partners, how could you, with your ideas, make sure that somewhere else in Canada with a similar story can work on the same thing? That is, we want to create stories to connect Canadians from ocean to ocean to ocean.
I guess my question is along the same lines. With the cuts that CBC endured, I guess the first part is how has that affected the rollout of 2015 in terms of the region, and in terms of the regions, and secondly, in terms of minority language communities, the anglophone community in Quebec et les communautés francophones hors du Québec, dans quelle façon que Radio
How will CBC Radio-Canada involve people not only in the regions but also in the official language communities? How will CBC get them all involved? So there are two parts to your question. How will our strategy be implemented given the budget cuts? I'll begin with that part of the question, if I may. The plan hasn't changed. Our objective to have a Canada-wide programming is still there. Our objective to be a public broadcaster entrenched in the regions is still there. And thirdly, we want to be a leader technology on all platforms. Some of these initiatives have been slowed down, but not struck. we had what we called in the local extension service plan. We had a plan that was going to target certain communities in the West, but we've had to slow things down. However, the objectives that we set to deliver our services to a larger number of Canadians is still there. We're going to use new platforms if we're not able to, but we may have to do it differently than what we initially thought. So we have cut back on the number of cities where we're going to be going, but we have not, our objectives remain, we're still true to our objectives. We still want to remain very anchored in the regions. Now, for the plans connected or related to the conferences and the ideas that will flow from these conferences, our objective is to ensure that in each community, for each organizing committee, all of the people, all of the organizations that are local, we want them to have an opportunity to express themselves. And as a result of these conferences, put forward some ideas that we can connect with other towns, ideas that we'll be able to use for our content. And we want to ensure that these people can talk about their ideas, can tell us what they want to do. This isn't a consultation. We're asking them, what are you doing? How are your ideas going to be connected to the ideas proffered by other communities? Thank you, Mr. Lacroix. Mr. Gourde. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you, Mr. Lacroix. Thank you for coming. I think that this is a great idea to go out to Canadians and give them a platform or provide them with a forum for expressing their ideas. I think that Canadians will learn more about our country and they will discover the exceptional stories. I think you're really on the right path. At the start of your presentation, you talked about celebrating the event both in French and English. Do you have any projects where these where we can celebrate in both official languages? I'm talking about children's programming or series where French and English will both be present. And you can, so perhaps these programs could be aired both on CBC and Radio-Canada at the same time. So it will perhaps serve to expose more Canadians to the other official language. When you listen when you have programs that are of interest to both language groups, that encourages people to learn more. The 8th Fire program was an example of this. We had an English and French version. The program was delivered to all Canadians in both official languages at the same time. We have another documentary called One Nation. I think it was from April 30th to 2012. We began with people. We actually looked at 24 hours in the lives of Canada. We began with Atlantic Canada, and then we went right across the country over a 24-hour period, right to Vancouver, and concluded with 2 police officers, one in French, one English, two police officers who were working together, and they formed the conclusion of this day in the life of Canada. And that's something that we would definitely consider. Was that popular? Absolutely. I think that's something worth repeating. I think that, especially for young people, young Canadians, according to statistics, we need to encourage them to learn both official languages. Is this all going to be rolled out this year? Yes, the first conference is going to be held in Vancouver, and we'll be holding them in 12 different cities, and this will conclude on June 27th in Ottawa. You're asking Canadians whether they have ideas, and if they have ideas, to come forward with them. Our objective is to be a catalyst. We want to spark ideas. We're going to ask people what they intend to do to celebrate this event in their communities. And by bringing people together, we're hoping that these people will come up with ideas, that they'll contact other people in their communities who may have similar ideas, and then we'll be able to, this will act as an incubator for ideas. we realize that people might realize that there are other people in other communities that have the same type of ideas. So we'll connect them on our website. And as I said, we want to be a catalyst. We want to really talk about the projects that they want to do.
Par la radio, par la TV, lors des célébrations, lors de l'année.
These programs will be visual, audio, and so on. It can be local ideas. It can be a community association that might want to develop an event, that might want to start to use a local newspaper, and we're going to use those stories for our coverage of the 150th, because we want to show this as a bit of a puzzle. So the 150th anniversary will take place from January to December. We have, of course, July 1st. How are you going to roll this out? Well, the budgets have not yet been established. We want to be as present as we always have been for this kind of event. We want to make sure to have the momentum we need for these events and lead up right to 2017. We've got 6,000 hours of programming and so on. So we have to focus not just on big cities like Montreal. There's also the Saguenay region elsewhere. Well, I can tell you that we certainly, within the CBC, are very aware of the importance of these events. This is all part of our mandate, and we intend to celebrate 2017 properly, and Canadians will have you got some sponsors for this? Well, I mentioned Via Rail and others, but there are other sponsors as well. In the press communique that we issued, there are about 15 organizations that have already come forward to support these conferences. And this programming will use partners that we are reaching out to provide funding. We don't have all the funding we need for this, and we want to make sure that we can celebrate all of these events up to 2017. We're looking for 3 other major partners. Thank you. Mr. Dion. I would like to thank Mr. Lacroix for being here with us this afternoon. If I can summarize, you have said that between now and 2017, you are going to be holding consultations to find out what kind of projects Canadians would like to see to celebrate this 150th anniversary. Well, we have certain milestones between now and 2017, major events in Canada's history that we want to celebrate. For the content of our programming, we want sponsors so that we can have good quality programming. In parallel, we have started a process this week with our sponsors, so we've launched this initiative. It's a complementary process to have programming that will have coverage of stories that Canadians want to highlight for 2017. So the conferences and the other events are 2 separate channels. So I would like to know what role the linguistic communities will play with respect to the 2017 events. This brings me back to the conferences across Canada, the different groups, the various partners we will be bringing together, the emphasis that we will be putting on this. As you know, half of our stations are in minority communities, and those stations have a major role to play, just like CBC does in Quebec for the Anglophone minority communities. All of those people will have a role to play so that we build momentum toward 2017. This whole exercise seems a bit premature because we don't know how the government intends to celebrate 2017. But if we give you a blank slate, tell us what should be in our report on CBC and how 2017 is celebrated, the official language, communities, and so on. The CBC understands its role as a public broadcaster, connecting Canadians through stories that Canadians share, through following our historical chronology, how we've arrived where we are now, working with partners. I mentioned Via Rail, and we have the community foundations across Canada, as well as a number of other national groups that we're working with, because these groups can help create enthusiasm among Canadians for 2017 celebrations. You mentioned that there are a number of events and celebrations that you will be including in your programming. Is there a process that you use to make your decisions? You mentioned that you will be holding consultations, but we hope that by 2017 you will be doing this even better than you are now. Well, of course, we learn every time we do programming. We review how it went, how we produced it, what the reaction is, and so on. With Twitter and all of the feedback we get through our website, we have a number of performance indicators of whether there is public interest in what we are doing. Our choices, well, as you know, there are quite a number of important events between now and 2017. Which events we will cover and how, and so on, those will be the decisions we will have to make. I'm not a big television watcher. I often watch in English, but when I look at what you did for 2012, the war, or rather for the War of 1812, I heard some mixed feedback. One historian said that it wasn't very well covered. So I'm not quite sure myself, but could you give us some a review of that? Well, I'm not the person who does the programming or who even is following this in detail, but I have taken note of your comment and I will follow up. It seemed to me that it was a bit weak. I think that this was an important event. I think, therefore, that we should have had more in-depth discussion of it. The little that I saw was that people weren't very happy about having to be have this imposed on them, and I hope that there will be a little more enthusiasm for 2017. Thank you very much. You are a patriot.
And Mr. Galipeau, welcome to you both, and we'll continue with Mr. Galipeau.
Merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. C'est un grand plaisir pour moi de revenir dans mes vieilles pénates.
Thank you. I'm very pleased to be back here. I would like to welcome Mr. Lacroix, who knows already that I am a great admirer and fan of the CBC and have been for 6 decades, especially radio. Given my duties and activities, I'm very rarely able to sit down in front of the television, but I can listen to the radio anywhere. And I always have the radio on Radio-Canada in particular, or the CBC. I'm very aware of your mandate to connect Canadians across Canada, among themselves, between communities. In 1967, I know. I was 20, and I was very excited by the programming on Radio-Canada. I learned about my country, and when I visited different parts of the country, I always tried to find Radio-Canada on the dial, wherever I was. In 1992, when we had the 125th anniversary of Confederation, Radio-Canada was not a very active participant. In 2012, the public affairs programming was very actually mocked or denigrated the War of 1812. But in fact, our country really took form at that time. Our constitution dates back to that period in a way because people decided at that time that Canada needed to be a country. But there was a mocking tone to the programming. It seemed like it was the big bad government in Ottawa that wanted this event celebrated, and therefore it was a bad thing. Bernard Saint-Laurent certainly deserved his award, and Jim Corcoran would also deserve a prize. English Canadians have been helped to understand French music in Canada, especially Quebec music, through his efforts on the CBC. But where I have a problem, and Mr. Godin already raised this, is this attitude from Montreal that permeates, instead of having a pan-Canadian approach. For example, we had the ice storm in 1998. I listened to the radio day and night, and I didn't hear about Saint-Isidore or Ottawa or any other areas. Everything focused on Montreal. So I asked people how they knew what was going on. They listened to CFRA. So people in local French-speaking communities were having to listen to an English private radio station to find out what was going on. 15 years ago, I had a thick file that I sent to the CBC Ombudsman about the terminology used to describe the Canadian nation state. And when we talk about the provinces and the federal government, and what bothers me the most is when we hear about Quebec and English Canada. And I have to say that I am satisfied with the decision made by the Ombudsman. In fact, there were 3 ombudsmen that dealt with this before it was finally resolved. The response that came 5 years later was actually ignored. In Saint-Isidore, I was born in Saint-Isidore in Ontario, but I am a francophone. In Shawville, in Quebec, there are English speakers. They are not French Canadians, but they are Quebecers. So when we talk about Canada, and we are going to be celebrating the 150th anniversary of Canada in 4 years, we have to not underestimate the Canada-wide value of the French fact and the Canada-wide value of the English fact. I have always defended the French language in Ontario, but now I have to defend the English language in Canada because CBC often has people speaking who use American vocabulary and pronunciation, like lieutenant instead of lieutenant, for example. We have to be very careful. André Bergeron set the standard in French, and there should be standards in English as well. Because if we cannot protect Canadian English in Canada, all of the efforts made to protect French in Canada will be null and void. I was going to ask some questions, but thank you, Mr. Galipeau. Thank you for those comments. He was going to give me 15 seconds. We'll move now to Mr. Trottier. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Perhaps I can put some of Mr. Galipeau's questions into my time. I would like to thank Mr. Lacroix for being here this afternoon. The 150th anniversary is one of the ones that you mentioned, but we have these other events that are milestones in our history. The 150th anniversary of Confederation, or we might say the 150th anniversary of Canada, is a bit different because this isn't an event, this is really Canada we're celebrating. We need to talk about our history when we celebrate this, not just programming. We also need to talk about the present and the future. So how do you see Radio-Canada and CBC celebrating not only our history but also our present and future? You are quite right, Mr. Trottier. The 150th anniversary of Confederation is seen by us as the conclusion of process, of this momentum that I talked about earlier, that will include certain milestones leading up to the 150th anniversary. The major difference between the last time we had an event like this, where we had real awareness by Canadians of the importance of it, was one which helped us learn how to connect with people. But 50 years ago, all we could do was provide programming. But now we can get people involved, find out what interests them. We can connect you with someone on the other side of the country. So this is our starting vision. We are going to hold these conferences in these various communities. And this is why I emphasize, I would really like to thank Via Rail and the communities, because these encounters are going to happen in train stations, in community centers, in our radio and television stations. We want people to tell us what we should be doing. We are calling on them to find out what they are going to do. And we want to see if some of their ideas can be used by us in our programming. The digital platforms will help us connect with Canadians even more closely. So the programming will be done by Canadians out in the regions, and you will be facilitating the work. We are going to call on people to give us their stories. What's important here is to showcase the diversity in Canada, and we have to make sure that all regions in Canada provide us with elements of this portrait. Our family has watched the story of Donnie MacDonald. Our children found it really exciting and engaging and felt that it was a very good program. Are there any other programs like that? There is Confederation, but there are many other stories that bring us together. As Mr. Galipeau said, especially English Canadians tend to hear more about American history, and there are young people who understand more about George Washington and so on than about Canadian history.
So these big signature events, I think we're able to do the programming for things like that, such as Sir John A. Going back to what Mr. Dion said earlier, there are two types of events. The events that are going to flow from the conference, but there are major events like that. And we're going to tell these stories, but we need partners. It costs a lot of money to do such programs. And to get the quality you saw in the Sir John A. Macdonald program, we have to get other partners that can contribute money to do this. We're looking for funding. We have an important partner that's already joining with us. We're hoping to have a budget that will enable us to pursue these milestone events that I referred to in my opening statement. Mr. Dion Labelle. Good afternoon, Mr. Lacroix. I'm very pleased to meet you. I, too, am a fan of Radio-Canada. And when I hear the government make its criticisms, I would say that you said that there will be about 13,000 or 14,000 people who have lost their jobs since 2009 at Radio-Canada because of the various budget cutbacks that you've been subject to. So friendship is something that has to be earned. I look at the process that you implemented with respect to your conferences and the choice of these 18 partners. When you organized these various conferences, did you think about concluding organizations that defend language rights? We meet with these groups regularly before the committee. We meet various francophone associations. There's the Fédération culturelle des Canadiennes Françaises. There's the Federation of French-Canadian Seniors. Did you give any thought to including any of these organizations in the choice you made of this choice of 18 collaborators? You're aware of the list, so I'm not going to read it again. Our objective was that for each community where we're going to be traveling, we wanted to ensure that the local committee would bring in on this particular day, would bring in the organizations that you alerted to. And each of these organizations, in turn, could participate. The collaborators that are going to help us organize these conferences are facilitators. But the content of these conferences will depend on the interest and preparation of the players that will be invited. These are the people who are going to be telling the stories. These people will be participating throughout Canada. But are they going to be part of the process? Yes, they'll have their say. You'll be going to the capital cities. There's a conference scheduled for Montreal. That's the only official francophone city where you're going to be traveling. One francophone city out of 12. Do you feel that that's enough to really represent the desires of French-speaking Canadians with respect to what they want to see for their celebrations? If you look at the way we selected the cities and the provinces, you will see that we came up with this list, and for each of these conferences, well, I must say these conferences are inclusive. There's not one day or one conference for Francophones and one Francophones. Moncton, for example, we're hoping that both French and English speakers will go to the conferences. Same thing for the conference that'll take place in New Brunswick. Same thing for Montreal. So the idea behind this is that on this particular day when the conference is going to take place, that we're going to be able to attract participants that will get a good conversation going. So we didn't make a choice based on language. We chose the most important or the largest towns in the or cities in the provinces. Will these conferences be held in both languages? Will each conference be bilingual, or will you have one that will be? How is it going to work? Well, the way we see this working out is that people are going to be invited to the conference. In some of these conferences, I would imagine that everything will be taking place in both languages, but if the audience does not include both the language groups, it will take place in the other language. We're not. This isn't about excluding people. We will have simultaneous interpretation. We're going to ensure that in the room, all of the participants who speak, whether it be French or English, be able to do so in the language of their choice and will be understood by everyone. And it's the organizers who are going to make sure that all that is in place. Mr. Chisu?
Merci, Monsieur Lacroix, pour votre...
Thank you, Mr. Lacroix. Thank you for your presentation before the Standing Committee on Official Languages. The French language is the fifth most important language spoken in the world.
Of our confederation, the celebration is a celebration for all Canadians. A sizable number of Canadians are recent immigrants who are more or less unilingual. How you plan to involve this multicultural mosaic of our country in promoting our treasured linguistic duality, so important for the future development of our country? Are you contemplating involving the ethnic audiovisual media? The promotion of our linguistic duality, it is very important for the multicultural community.
So let me go back to some of the things I was saying about these conferences. These conferences are about us asking Canadians, what are you going to do about the 150th? They're going to be so regional, so local, that in every one of these communities, we hope that we will be able to bring in, because the organizing committees will be organizing committees of those local regions, of the regions and of those municipalities and those regions. We would like to think that they'll be able to draw in the people who have an interest, either personal interest, the interest through an association of some kind, a collectivity of some kind, and they will be asked, what are you going to do about the 150th? And the connection, and the Canada of 2017 and the Canada of 2013, as we do these conferences, is a Canada that is mixed with diverse Canadians, and I can't see that happening without a reflection of the points of views of the people that you're referring to.
But it is very important, the linguistic duality, for the future development of our country. So I think that this multicultural mosaic should be involved at the early stages on our commemoration, 150th commemoration. I'm just mentioning that, if maybe you know, that in Toronto, which is one of the largest cities of Canada, they are spoken 174 languages. Mm-hmm. But for the cohesion of our country, it is very important that the linguistic duality is achieved and it's continuing as a vivid preoccupation of all Canadians.
So that's why in Toronto on April 26th, I hope that the people who represent those communities will come in, have a conversation with us, have a conversation with the people who are in that room, and will be able to to voice the projects that they would like to see happen, that they will take control of. It's not about them telling us, here's what we should be doing. It's about us facilitating, and this is the big difference here. We are trying to facilitate the organization. We're trying to spark ideas. We're trying to generate, to act as a facilitator through Canadians. We're not asking Canadians, what should we do? That's going to come through the ideas that are going to come from all over the place. But this is about the communities. What are you going to do to celebrate the 150th? By having that input and impacting in the rooms in Toronto on that day, I hope that 174 languages will be in some way represented, because we're going to invite these communities, these opinion leaders in the room on that day with their communities to say, what are you going to do about this?
Okay, thank you very much. We are going to have one last questioner for this panel, and then we'll take a 5-minute suspension to allow our next witness to appear. So we'll continue with en continu avec Madame Michaud. Oh,
This is Michaud. Mr. Benson. Mr. Benskin.
We've been speaking about, for the most part, the providing of services in various communities, be it official language minority communities and so forth. What I want to talk about or ask you about now is part of our mandate, and by extension part of your mandate, is also the promotion of our official languages. So I'm wondering, I'm asking if there's any kind of programming involved, and this is speaking particularly to French. Est-ce qu'il y a des programmations?
Is there any programming
Uses or exposes the rest of Canada, as we're referring to it now, to French programming? Is there anything in the works that allow Anglophones, basically in Alberta, to access French programming as part of that celebration? This is who we are, as opposed to isolating it into sort of English communities in Quebec, French communities outside of Quebec. Is there any programming that lends itself to that?
So we don't see, Mr. Benskin, the programming that's going to come as being differentiated from province to province, from story to story. What we hope will happen is that these ideas will generate, I like the word mosaic, I think it's a good one, a mosaic that when a Canadian will, either through the access to the websites that are going to be built, or the programming, or anything we're going to do, that person will be able to enjoy a public space where stories about Canada are being told, where he or she will be able to contribute his or her story about Canada and start a conversation about where are we going? What's going to be the Canada of the future? What are we doing now? Some of the concerns that we have, some of the great things we're doing. In the context of programming, and what we do now, because I think that's also important, as you know, Section 41 of the Official Languages Act says that we have to report every year on what we do. If I can, I'll send you to the reports that we file there, because every year we list all the programs that we do for francophones who are outside of Quebec, for anglophones who are in Quebec, and the associations that we support, the projects. All of this would normally continue and explode in the context of the 150th.
Okay, but what I'm speaking to more directly is the exposure of French programming in Alberta. For example, encouraging Anglophones in Alberta, in Manitoba, in Saskatchewan, encouraging to seek out French programming and gain that exposure, because we're not simply talking about language, we're talking about culture as well. And to better understand Canada as a whole, one of the best ways is to introduce them to the culture.
I think you have a very important point. I would like to think and hope that that's what we do through our presence in the regions, are the stations that we kept open, because in the context of all these challenges that we have had with respect to budgets, CBC Radio-Canada has made a choice not to impact its footprint, its geographical footprint, to keep its stations open and to make choices somewhere else. Because we know that when we are in a community, whether we are there by our digital presence, like we are in Hamilton right now, or on la rive nord et la rive sud de Montréal, or whether it's the opening of a new station in BC, like in Kamloops, or whether it's a television station in Saskatoon, or a presence that we're, not in Saskatoon, but in Regina, and the expansion of our services in Saskatoon, all of these promote the French and the English services of CBC Radio-Canada and their delivery in both languages. So if you're an Anglophone in Alberta, right now, you have access to Radio-Canada in French in Alberta, and we'd like to think that the cross-promotion and the work that we do to promote ourselves in the programs will cross this famous divide.
Okay. Merci, Mr. Benskin. And
Thank you, Mr. Benskin. Mr. Godin? Mr. Lacroix, you referred to the Official Languages Commissioner's report. Yes, it's on our website.
Really important, fun thing happened. Remember the book, Two Solitudes? Hugh McLennan, great book. Home Run, which is the drive home show in Montreal on CBC, is doing a remote from one of the Chapters bookstores, where Jay Baruchel, who is an actor in the States, in the U.S., is going to cross. We asked him. He said, yes, absolutely. And they're going to talk about growing up as an Anglophone in a Francophone environment in the same way that the Two Solitudes book was written 50 years ago. And we have had a Canada Read Week, and we've challenged the people to reread that book, and in 2013 to tell us on Friday how they feel about growing up in English, if you're an Anglophone, à Montréal, or in French, dans un milieu anglophone. So
is it in
this
the
is
chapters?
exactly...
Is it in the Chapters on Saint Laurent Boulevard?
Yes, on the corner in the Montreal district, on the corner of McGill College and St. Catherine. So I'm saying this because it's just an interesting example of some of the stuff that we do to actually promote the Two Solitudes.
Just quickly, just a correction for the record. Jay is a friend of mine, and Jay is a Canadian actor who works in the States.
Yes. That's exactly right. I hope I didn't say that he was an American actor. And his girlfriend is also a Canadian actor who's married in the States, Alison Pill. So,
Monsieur Lacroix, merci beaucoup pour votre...
Thank you, Mr. Lacroix. Thank you for your testimony.
5 minutes.
thank you.
We'll continue now with our 66th meeting of our committee, Standing Committee on Official Languages. We are now in our second hour.
Of Heritage Conservation and Commemoration Directorate of Parks Canada. Welcome to you, and you may begin with your opening statement.
Thank you very much. Monsieur le Président, Messieurs les vice-présidents, honorables députés membres du Comité permanent de la Chambre des communes du Canada sur les langues officielles.
Honorable members of Parliament, I would like to thank you for your kind invitation.
Today. À titre de champion des langues officielles de Parcs Canada, je suis
As the official languages champion of Parks Canada, I am pleased to share with you our plans for promoting linguistic duality as part of the activities we will offer Canadians on the Road to 2017, which will lead us to the 150th anniversary celebrations of Canadian Confederation in 2017. I should rather say that we are offering, since one of the first themes of these celebrations, the War of 1812, already constitutes one concrete example. Before getting to the heart of the matter, allow me to provide a quick background regarding our agency, which, with its 44 national parks, 4 national marine conservation areas, and 167 national historic sites, is present in hundreds of communities, including many linguistic minority communities across the country, a presence that makes Parks Canada one of the major players of Canada's tourism industry.
Canada, on behalf of the people of Canada, is to protect and present nationally significant examples of Canada's natural and cultural heritage and to foster public understanding, appreciation, and enjoyment in ways that ensure their ecological and commemorative integrity for present and future generations. Our vision further states that Canada's treasured natural and historic places will be a living legacy, connecting hearts and minds to a stronger, deeper understanding of the very essence of Canada. Thanks to the hard work of our team of dedicated men and women and their genuine passion for our collective heritage, Parks Canada is recognized nationally and internationally as a leader in heritage protection and conservation. Through its presence in hundreds of communities across Canada, including many official language minority communities, our agency's overall national economic impact is estimated at more than $3 billion, according to recent figures, which benefits all Canadians from sea to sea. Connecting hearts and minds to a stronger, deeper understanding of the very essence of Canada requires that we reach out to Canadians and engage them in their own official language. Pour Parcs Canada, la reconnaissance
For Parks Canada, the recognition and even the promotion of the linguistic duality goes well beyond a simple legal requirement. For our agency, linguistic duality constitutes one of the defining features that make Canada, Canada. This is why we have, for example, quickly adopted new technologies. Thanks to new technologies, we are now in a position to promote the linguistic duality of our country by reaching many individuals, including Canadians in official language minority communities, and by interacting with them not only in large centers or in places where we are present, but also directly in their homes. The opportunities offered by these new media have quickly taken a strategic importance for us and have become an indispensable tool to reach new audiences in both official languages.
Parks Canada's national YouTube channels in both English and in French have more than 1 million videos viewed, with close to 1,500 viewers and about 150 videos published from across the country. The Parks Canada national Twitter feed has surpassed 30,000 followers. And Parks Canada's national brand channel on Facebook has more than 13,000 friends who collectively have 2 million friends. But be it Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, or our website, or even our intranet site, everything we publish, everything we communicate is done simultaneously in both official languages. Thanks to new media, we can now reach and engage more Canadians than ever. Young Canadians, new Canadians, urban Canadians, and Canadians in official language minority communities, and share our passion with them in the official language of their choice. As we embark on the road to 2017, these new media will again help us promote the linguistic duality of this country. But our efforts are not only restricted to new media. La dualité linguistique du Canada était déjà
Canada's linguistic duality was already at the heart of the celebrations that marked Parks Canada's centennial in 2011. whether it be this is again the case as we make our way on the road to 2017. Already, the activities and events celebrating the bicentennial of the War of 1812, one of the milestones of our history, are evidence of our commitment.
Canada administers more than 20 of the most important national historic sites associated with the War of 1812. We will keep those sites at the forefront of the Government of Canada's commemorations until 2014 and keep telling the story of how Anglophones, Francophones, and Aboriginal peoples, working together, successfully defended their land and way of life, laying the foundation for the bilingual Canada that we're proud of today. In each of these places, Canadians are invited to come celebrate with us through activities and events that make equal place for both official languages. This will continue as we reach and celebrate other important milestones leading to the 150th anniversary of Confederation. Another major part of Parks Canada's contribution to these celebrations will be an increasing emphasis on connecting young Canadians to their national heritage places before, during, and after 2017. Our aim is to connect youth with their heritage for life while exposing them to the other official language. This, we believe, will contribute to building the next generation of stewards that will comprise our future visitors, supporters, and employees in a true reflection of Canada's linguistic duality. When he appeared before you last December, the Commissioner of Official Languages stated that linguistic duality is an integral part of Canada's history and identity. The fathers of Confederation and those inspired by them saw the question of language in terms of a founding principle of respect. We at Parks Canada totally agree. Linguistic duality increases our appeal to visitors from all parts of Canada and many parts of the world. Our brand personality is to be welcoming and warm, and linguistic duality doubles the warmth of our welcome. Mesdames et messieurs les députés,
Members of Parliament, ladies and gentlemen, for over 100 years, Parks Canada has not only been protecting, but also telling stories and bringing to life our heritage and history. We will be committing all the experience, leadership, and passion that drives us to offer Canadians exceptional opportunities to take part in this huge celebration, which is theirs, and reinforce along the way the Canadian linguistic duality. I would like to thank you for the kind attention you have given me, and I will now be happy to answer your questions.
answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Dr. Ostella. J'ai eu des discussions avec...
I had discussions with members on the committee, and I have decided that we will discuss our motions, which I received, next week and not today. So that will be on Tuesday.
5 minutes of questions and comments. Monsieur Godin.
Merci, Monsieur.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I would like to welcome Mr. Ostola to our meeting here today. I have a preliminary question. The Official Languages Commissioner carried out a study to look at the extent to which Parks Canada meets its obligations to visitors. The report came out in September 2012, and the Commissioner felt that consultation with minority language communities was not a strong point and called on Parks Canada to put in place as quickly as possible a consultation mechanism to hold regular consultations with these communities at the regional, provincial, and national levels to find out what their specific needs were. Since this report came out in September 2012, have you taken any steps to regularly consult these minority communities? Thank you very much for your question, Mr. Godin. To begin with, I would say that we have worked closely with the Office of the Official Languages Commissioner and did so throughout the study. We took part in the audit activities because it really set the groundwork for our Road to 2017 initiative. We wanted to have an outside perspective on our activities, so this audit was certainly timely. We are quite aware of the recommendations made by the Official Languages Commissioner, and in particular the one that you mentioned regarding more in-depth consultation with linguistic minority communities. Our people out in the field have certainly consulted those communities in the past. We have also had formal consultations. For example, we prepare management plans and we do consultations at that time. As a follow-up to the Commissioner's recommendation, we certainly intend to make progress in this area and to develop strategies to improve our consultations with those communities. Thank you. I'm told that you have replaced interpretive services by informative signs. In March, could you give the list of historic sites that will lose their interpreters and have these interpretive panels replace them in March 2013? When people visit parks and sites, there used to be people there that would guide them, and now there are just going to be signs. Yes, we will be pleased to provide you the information you have requested. I can tell you that at certain sites, we will not have staffed information, but rather provide it in written form. New technologies are certainly helpful in this regard and can help us with interpretive activities. Yes, I can provide you that information. Well, people will just be able to see a sign when they visit a zoo. That might work if you want to know where the tiger is from, but when you visit a park, really, we are going to be losing something if we don't have staff there that can provide that information. I think if we are moving toward the 150th anniversary, we've heard a lot about the War of 1812 and the millions of dollars spent to commemorate that event, then there's some imbalance somewhere, I think. I want to talk about accessibility as well in Canada's parks. There are special days that could provide people with free access to the parks, perhaps. We've got the Grand Pré site that has been recognized by UNESCO. The Senate did very good work. There's wonderful work that has been done at Grand Pré. We need to make Acadian history better known. We need people from both language communities to be able to participate. I would like to thank you, and I recognize that the Grand Pré historic site is now on the World Heritage Site list, and we are all very proud of that fact. It is a very important opportunity, not only for Parks Canada, but for all Canadians when we learn that. One concern we have as well is that there are 20 historic sites in Atlantic Canada that emphasize Acadian history. How are those sites going to be affected? What effect will the cuts have on those? I can tell you that, obviously, in the context of the 2012 budget, Parks Canada has been called on to do its part. Nonetheless, our team across the country is dynamic and professional and is prepared to serve Canadians enthusiastically in our parks and sites, and nothing has changed in that regard. Well, Mr. Ostola, if people are just going to have signs to read, we know that cuts have taken place and there are going to be signs instead of people. to provide the information. You say you want to do your part, but while I have no doubt that people who are there are prepared to do their part, I think that there have been cuts, and I want to know how those have affected services. Thank you. A short answer, please. We are confident that we will be able to provide services as we have for the past 100 years that are of high quality to Canadians across the country. Mr. Gould. Thank you, Mr. Estola, for being here with us this afternoon. I noticed that you provided us with statistics about new media and how they're used by Parks Canada. I would like to know how long it's taken to get here and where you are heading with that. Do you expect to be able to reach out to 80% of Canadians? As I mentioned in my presentation, we think that social media hold great promise for us and for other organizations as well.
Parks are real jewels in our country. But I'd like to ask you a question on another issue. 2017, what do you want exactly? We want to be celebrating something special in the park. I know that the park celebrates lots of things, but how do you view 2017? First of all, I would say that as far as Parks Canada is concerned, and considering our historic sites and our national parks that you mentioned, well, this is a golden opportunity in 2017, not only to celebrate the 150th anniversary of Confederation, but to really take the time and seize the occasion to generate interest and passion for our legacy and our historic heritage. Parks Canada is really in a great position to do this, and we can encourage people to really experience their heritage in an active way, to participate, to be part of our story and part of our natural history. I think that we can really do something, and if we manage to attain our objectives, it will be a job well done. But our exercise might be a little bit premature here, but let's be imaginative. If we were to give you a blank sheet for the report that we have to write, what would you like to see written on this blank page? We have to get prepared now. If this is all going to unfold in 2017, we've got to do things. What would you like to see written? And what would you like to see happen that doesn't exist right now? That Canadians seize this opportunity, as I mentioned earlier, that they choose to really experience their heritage, and that we encourage them to do so not only in 2017, but in the years leading up to 2017, because as was underscored earlier, this is not just the commemoration of 1 year. There's a whole series of events that took place leading up to this year and that led to what happened in 2017. The government and yourselves are doing things to ensure that Canadians are aware of their parks, and there's a lot of information about the historic sites. But what do we need to do in addition? I think that one thing we could do, we talk about a lot of anniversaries and commemorations, whether it be the First World War, World War I, or 1812. I think one thing we could do would be to connect these anniversaries together in order to really paint a portrait of the country, where we started, where we are now, and where we're headed. I think we could use these celebrations to accomplish that. And how do you want to be a player in this? Are you going to encourage the government to come up with some new structure to do this? As far as Parks Canada is concerned, I think we're in a great position. you know already that our parks are throughout the country. We're in every province and every territory, whether we're talking about historic sites or parks. And I think we're really in a good position to encourage Canadians to come together and celebrate with us and to really witness the changes that have taken place. What do you need? What's missing? The government has said that the government has said that it wants to go ahead with these celebrations. You're to be a partner. As I said in answering another question, we have a team. We have teams throughout the country, people who are passionate about the history of Canada, about the natural history of Canada, and who are prepared to welcome Canadians and listen to them. And I think that we have everything we need to be able to participate actively, not only in the 2017 events, but in the events leading up to then. So you didn't ask for anything special. What about, for example, something that will really, really strike a chord with Canadians, something that'll, so that Canadians are going to talk more and more about the parks. We referred to our partners, such as Heritage Canada. We're working with them to see what the possibilities are, not only for 2017, but what will the possibilities be leading up to that date? What type of activities or initiatives could we undertake in order to inspire people to discover their own heritage? Okay. So are you looking for new initiatives? We're always open to suggestions, and we do get suggestions from the public, from our colleagues, from other organizations, and this will bring us to 2017. What type of relationship do you have with the official language minority communities? In the past, we've already had opportunities to work with these official language minority groups in conjunction with our parks and historic sites. In the future, we want to get their viewpoint, and we will, and consultations with these groups will help us determine what approach we will take for 2017. Thank you. Mr. Galipo. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Here today, Dr. Ostola, I want to tell you that I very much appreciated the tone and the drive of the questions that were just addressed by Mr. Dion. But I might want to, unless I'm mistaken, I think that Parks Canada already gives free passes for 1 year for all new Canadians. So what he's suggesting for all Canadians, well, there's already, the thin edge of the wedge is already there. My first job was with Parks Canada in Prince Albert, Saskatchewan. And je faisais l'interprétation.
And I was an interpreter in a museum there.
The fan mail that Gray Owl received. He died in 1938, and in 1965 he was still getting fan mail. And so I read all his books and I answered the mail. Much of it had to do with the conservation of the environment, and that was always something very important with Parks Canada. The Rideau Canal is something that's very close to us. It was built in the late 1820s, basically because as a military asset to protect us from a potential new attack from the United States, because 1812 was still pretty clear in our minds then. The Rideau Canal has now been designated as a World Heritage Site. So what's the consequence of that? Does it attract more visitors? And and it's mostly in areas of the province where there are not many francophones. So what do we do to help visitors in both official languages in that area?
Well, thank you very much for the question. And first, let me say that I'm delighted that you had the opportunity to directly experience Prince Albert National Park, which is a wonderful jewel in our national system of national parks. And when the Rideau Canal was designated a World Heritage Site a few years ago, that was indeed, as it was in the case of Grand Pré,
I was there.
a very significant, yes, you were, a very significant occasion. And again, as was the case with Grand Pré, a source of great pride to us all. In terms of reaching out, in terms of the question you asked, in terms of reaching out to linguistic minority communities, in all of our activities, interpretive activities, the communications that we make, the publications that we produce, and so on, we make every effort to make sure that we're reaching out to people in the language of their choice. So we greatly respect the fact that there are different language communities in different parts of Canada, and we do everything that we can to ensure that we're respecting not only the intent but the spirit of the Official Languages Act in our efforts to reach out to them. So people have access to interpretive programs in the official language of their choice and so on. And we want to continue to be able to provide that service so that people know when they come to our places they will in fact be greeted warmly in terms of our brand personality in the official language of their choice.
I thank you, and I'm satisfied with the answer that you gave me, but I just want to remind you that I'm not altogether satisfied with the answers that you gave to Mr. Dion. And I hope that as soon as you can put some flesh on those bones that you'll let us know. I'd like to share my time with my colleague.
Mr. Chisu?
Thank you very
Go ahead.
much. Thank you very much, Dr. Ostola, for your presentation. And as I understand, Parks Canada is mandated to protect and present Canada's natural and cultural heritage. So, very much Parks Canada is renowned in the world. It is one of the examples of preserving nature and heritage. And congratulations also for your recent 100 years celebration. Is linguistic duality one of the elements of cultural heritage that Parks Canada will celebrate during events marking the 150th anniversary of Confederation? And if is yes, how will be this reflected in the new National Urban Park, which will be well on its way to be established in 2017, which is the Rouge Park? This park has an easy access to many Canadians. On an array of 100 kilometers, you will reach 20% of the Canadian populations. So how this park will be used to promote our bilingualism, but not also only our bilingualism, but also our cultural heritage, and our other national parks.
So I guess there are a few things, and thank you for the question. There are a few things that I would say in response. Certainly to address the first point that you raised, it is our intention to make sure that linguistic duality is actively reflected and respected in the context of everything that we do for the 150th anniversary of Confederation. And I think the effective way in which, one of the effective ways in which we're going to be able to do that is to ensure that when Canadians come to our places, whether they be national historic sites or national parks, and visit us, they have the possibility to experience the places in the language of their choice, and in a way where they feel welcome and in a way where they're encouraged to find out and discover more about their heritage. So I think that's a very important way in which we can contribute to the promotion of linguistic duality in the context of the 150th anniversary celebrations. Now, you also specifically raised the case of the Rouge National Urban Park, and I think quite rightly pointed out that it represents a phenomenal opportunity in the heart of Canada's largest urban area, and really an opportunity to reach out to different communities, and communities, in many cases, who may not in the past have had the opportunity to directly experience our national parks and national historic sites. So we have the opportunity not only to promote the linguistic duality, which is a reality of Canada, but we also have the opportunity, through the programs and initiatives that we undertake at the Rouge, to really help people, and again, people who may have come from different places and different backgrounds, who may have not had the opportunity to experience Canadian heritage firsthand. We will have the opportunity, I think, to excite and inspire them. If the Rouge is their first stop, well, maybe next summer they will choose to go to the Fortress of Louisbourg in Cape Breton, or maybe they'll like to visit the Rocky Mountain National Parks. There's an opportunity for us to use that first stop as a basis upon which people will then be encouraged to really learn more about the heritage that really is our common heritage.
Are there any plans already in place for the Rouge Park regarding the celebration of 2017? Or it is too early to speak? I am just asking this one because my military background is telling me that you need to plan ahead.
And as I mentioned earlier, discussions are actively underway with a number of partners in terms of developing activities and initiatives that might be undertaken on the road to 2017 and in 2017. There's nothing specific that I can say about the Rouge at this point, except to say that it clearly will be integrated into the planning that we do as we head towards 2017.
Very much, Mr. President.
Merci. Madame Michaud.
Madame Michaud, I would like to thank our witness for being here. I have a number of questions. First of all, you mentioned in your presentation, if I understood correctly, that it is essential in the eyes of Parks Canada to showcase both above Canada's official languages. With the cuts that have taken place in the last budget, obviously there will be an impact on official language communities. Has Parks Canada calculated what the impact of the $29 million cuts will be? Thank you for your question. As I mentioned earlier, yes, there were reductions in our budget as a result of the 2012 federal budget, but excuse me, I'm going to interrupt you because I have a number of questions, and I really want to know whether Parks Canada has assessed the impact of these cuts on the official language minority communities, yes or no? We looked at this in an overall way. There wasn't a specific study. Is this something you plan to do at Parks Canada? One of the things I mentioned at the beginning when the question was asked about the official languages audit was that the whole aspect of the minority language communities is something we are looking at, and I think we will be able to do that. I think it would be very useful to have that information, because this is something our committee should look at, and so if you could send us that information, it would be appreciated. Now, moving along in the same way, we've got these cuts. For example, the closing of Riel House. There will no longer be any interpretive guides there to talk about the importance of this house and Louis Riel for our heritage, and the importance for Francophone and Métis heritage elsewhere. Also, we have Laurier House in Canada, where there will no longer be a guide, 100 jobs lost. We will have higher fees to get into the parks, and so on. So how can Parks Canada really get ready for a big celebration like 2017 when we have these cuts and limited funding for our language communities, so how can they really take part in highlighting this heritage? I mentioned earlier that there are sites across Canada that will be converted to signage. Well, that's happening right now. We're not talking about closing these sites, but there is no information available except on signage. There won't be the kinds of services available like there have been up to now to get more information to people other than what they can just read on the side, to really highlight what can be important to people in these communities and answer their questions. For example, to the Métis and Francophones, there may be aspects that are of less interest to Anglophones. So how are you going to overcome that problem? That's a very good question, and I have two answers. First of all, we can look at different aspects in different areas. For example, you mentioned Louis Riel. There is a way to cover that part of our history at various sites. And we're not just talking about signage in the changes. There will be new technologies we can use to provide information to help people understand the importance of these sites. Do you have any ideas? I've just given you some examples. How would this apply to the Louis Riel House and the upcoming 2017 celebrations? Well, this is a hypothetical example because we haven't yet identified solutions. But in that case, we might have a self-guided visit so that people could use some kind of an electronic medium or some kind of an audio guide like people do at museums and so on. Well, you would need additional budgets, wouldn't you? Thank you, Ms. Michaud. We think, as I mentioned in my presentation as well, that we are going to be getting even more into social media, and based on our current knowledge, we think that we can apply what we know already to those situations. Thank you. Mr. O'Toole. I will give Mr. Galipeau 1 minute of my time.
My friend Aaron O'Toole, this is his baptism today. J'ai une question à poser à Monsieur Ostola, si je peux.
I have a question. Do you know the visitor statistics for Laurier House and Riel House? I'm sorry, I don't have those statistics here with me, but we do have them.
Laurier House, at least once a year for the last 50 years. And Laurier House last year, counting 4 visits from me, had fewer than 5,000 visitors. I'm done.
Thank you very much, Mr. Galipeau. Mr. O'Toole.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for Mr. Ostola for being here. I just have one question, and I will ask it in English.
I know that the Trans-Canada Trail Foundation is coming up with a fundraising initiative and a 150th initiative. I'm wondering whether there's a potential for the trail or an expansion of the trail to help connect our system of parks from sea to sea to sea, and whether discussions with a group like that, with a conservancy mandate, with a connecting of Canadians through all regions, could not work together with our park system to allow Canadians to explore and traverse the country. Have any partnerships like that been discussed?
Well, you raise a very interesting question, and I think that in terms of partnerships generally, there are many, I think, exciting opportunities on the road to 2017, and there has been work done with the Trans-Canada Trail Foundation in the past, and I would not at all be surprised to see work continue to be done in the future, because there are opportunities through partnerships with organizations such as that one to really find ways to effectively link citizens to our places, and that's just one example, but there are others, and these are all partnership opportunities. I think they're going to have to be explored in the context of what we might do with respect to the 150th anniversary of Confederation. But I think you've raised a very good example.
Any other questions? No? Okay, we'll now go to Mr. Benskin.
Thank you. I guess I'm just thinking about Mr. Galipeau's comment, and I come from the world of the arts. I'm an actor. I've done a mass amount of theater in my life. Theater doesn't pay. It doesn't pay you as an actor, and it doesn't pay theater companies. But it's extremely important, because that live contact with an audience is something that you'll never get in film and television. When I go out into schools, I say that the difference between buying Justin Bieber's CD and seeing Justin Bieber live, they get the difference. And I'm a bit concerned, I guess, and I understand the pragmatism about it, but I'm a bit concerned about the reliance of technology. I'm fine with social media and so forth and everything else, but there's nothing like being able to walk into a museum, and see a Van Gogh hanging on the wall. You can look at a picture. There's nothing like walking into La Maison Real or Laurier and having that tangibility of being able to ask questions, to an individual who can then give you answers. So I'm a bit concerned about whether or not the technology is going to drive people away from visiting sites, because if you can look at it on YouTube, if you can look at it on what's going to get more butts in the seats, as we say in theater. How is Parks Canada addressing that?
Well, thank you very much for the question, and I appreciate what you've said with respect to the direct contact. But there's another aspect that I guess I would raise as well. And if I take Laurier House in Ottawa as an example, Laurier House is also an extraordinary environment where Canadians have the opportunity to walk in the steps of historical figures who've occupied Laurier House at different times, and to really absorb the atmosphere in often a very personal and a very tranquil way. In fact, it's not unusual for visitors to say, I really just want to contemplate this and really soak in the atmosphere. And so that's another dimension of the experience I think is very important, and that dimension of the experience will not change. People will go to Laurier House and they will be in the authentic environment, which is the historic environment of the house and the furnishings and so on, which I think people would find very, very appealing.
Okay. But are there any efforts in place to try and get more people? What action is being taken to try and get more people out into both historic sites and our parks?
We feel that it is absolutely essential to make sure that we are relevant, to make sure that our national parks and national historic sites are relevant, and that we are finding creative, innovative, inspiring, and exciting ways to connect Canadians to these places. And when I say connection, what I'm talking about is a profound and deep and meaningful sense of personal attachment, and I've alluded to this several times, an attachment of Canadians to the heritage that they should be proud of and that they need to experience firsthand. And so you're absolutely right. In terms of promotion, we need to make sure that Canadians are aware of these places. And once we've made them aware of them, we have to make sure that when they visit them, they can enjoy these powerful, personal experiences which will attach them to these places and hopefully encourage them to come back and to tell their friends.
Thank you. Just more time. I'd like to actually give you kudos for the work that Parks Canada did in and around the Lachine Canal. Lachine Canal is in my writing, where I share it with one of my colleagues, and I was quite impressed with the efforts put in by Parks Canada to bring people to the Lachine Canal. The Lachine Canal and that whole area is the heart of the industrialization of Canada. So are there other areas that you'll be looking at in terms of that kind of promotional work to get people out again out into the parks and so forth?
Thank you, Mr. Enskin. Dr. Estella?
We want to make Canadians across the country aware of our network, so it's not focused on a single geographic area, a single region, or a single park or site. We want to find creative and innovative ways, and in fact, I pointed to social media as one way that we're getting the word out already, and I'll just digress for a moment to give you one small example. We recently established, and this speaks to our use of technology, a Twitter feed related to archaeology. So our archaeologists and our specialists can communicate to Canadians with respect to the work that they do, and I think you may agree that Canadians and people generally find archaeology to be a fascinating subject. But to your point, we want to find ways to interest and to inspire people about the network generally. So not just one particular site or region, but what are these amazing national treasures that Parks Canada administers on behalf of all Canadians, wherever they may be located.
Okay, thank you. And our last couple of minutes go to Mr. Trottier.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. One aspect of Parks Canada I have always appreciated is that there are people from across Canada that work in any given national park or site. Could you talk about your hiring and human resources practices? How do you choose those who work, especially in the summer in our national parks, our young people? I should answer you in French, of course. I can talk to you perhaps a little bit about my own personal experience. I started as an interpretive guide, as a student for Parks Canada. What park was it? It was at Fort Temiskaming in northwestern Quebec, and then later in Old Montreal and elsewhere. I was so impressed and inspired by those sites as a historian that I decided I wanted to work for Parks Canada, and 25 years later, I'm still here. You are quite right. There are many people across the country who have already had the opportunity. Mr. Galipo worked for Parks Canada, and we continue to hire students with different specializations, different abilities, and they work in our sites and parks, and many of these young people stay with Parks Canada. Even if they do not, at least we will have had the opportunity to make them more aware and knowledgeable about their cultural, natural, and historic heritage. A few more minutes? Yeah. Oh. I also want to talk about the minority official language communities. Are there any particular projects that Parks Canada is considering to celebrate 2017? I'm thinking, for example, of my own experience as a Franco-Albertan, and also I have part of my heritage in Manitoba. What are you going to do to reflect that reality? I think the most important thing that we can do, and we are doing it, is to really recognize that reality and to acknowledge it in a concrete and consistent way. In everything we do, through our programming, our consultations, the communications products that we develop, we need to respect, and we do respect, the spirit of the legislation, as I already mentioned. This is a very important aspect. We need to showcase the reality of our official language minority communities. When it comes to the French fact in Western Canada, For example, are there specific projects? I'm not fully aware of the situation in Manitoba, but there must be sites associated with Louis Riel and other Francophone historical events and elsewhere in Western Canada. Yes, we celebrate different parts of our history at different sites. We have a whole panoply of sites that reflect all of our cultural and historical heritage. The history of Louis Riel, for example, is displayed at a number of different sites. We've got the history of the voyageurs as well that is celebrated at different sites. And I think that this is another way to recognize not just the diversity of our history, but also our linguistic diversity. Thank you. I would like to thank Mr. Ostola and Mr. Trottier and all committee members.